Cervantes, and this is my son Israel Cervantes. He will be helping me. My wife Eva Cervantes is there in the back, and two little girls are not here. They're down there with the children. And tonight we're going to start the first session of a 4-session series. So tonight we will be discussing the cave. Has anybody ever been there to Qumran or the Dead Sea? Anybody in here? I've never been there. I am not an expert, but I've studied it. I wrote a thesis on it, and two of my professors go regularly over there. And in fact, I was speaking to one today, Sunday, Saturday, Friday evening. He just came back from Turkey, and he was doing a tour over there in Qumran, actually. So he was very excited for me, and as I start this session. So I need a volunteer. Somebody will pray for me, for the Lord to guide me as we continue in the session series. Any volunteer?
Father, thanks for this opportunity to be here tonight. Thank you that the church is thoughtful about educating us in a number of different topics that only strengthen our faith and give us ready answers and just enhance us intellectually, Father. That's a good thing. We pray for Brother Cervantes tonight, and we pray for him. We thank you for his preparation and his work, and that we would be good listeners in your name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. So how many of you have heard of the Qumran Scrolls? It says Qumran Scrolls. How many of you have heard of them? Most people have heard of the Dead Sea Scrolls. Now, the reason I choose the title Qumran Scrolls basically is because that's the place where they were discovered. For some reason, some people think they were discovered in the actual Dead Sea. I don't know why they think that. Okay. But in fact, the Dead Sea, like the Sea of Galilee, they're actually lakes. They're not really seas, but it doesn't sound nice if you say the Dead Lake Scrolls. So they gave it the name the Dead Sea Scrolls. Okay. So, and obviously the name is given by scholars and biblical experts. So that's what we're going to be discussing this evening: the caves, where they were found, and tomorrow night we will be discussing the actual scrolls themselves, the most important scrolls, and then the third night we will be comparing the Dead Sea Scrolls manuscripts with the Masoretic text. Has anybody ever heard of the Masoretic text? It would be like the King James Bible, comparing it with the Septuagint. The Septuagint is the Greek translation of the Hebrew Bible. And then the fourth night we will be discussing about the Messiah. Okay? And so we're going to start, and I'm like, if everybody's like me, I just want the facts. I don't like to go through a lot of mumbo jumbo. I got that at school, so I just want the facts. So here we go. Where were the scrolls discovered, basically? So we already know. They were discovered in Qumran. Okay? It's about, from what I understand, it's a 2-hour driving distance from Jerusalem, or a 25-hour walking distance from there. So Qumran is about a mile northwestern from the Dead Sea, and you can see it right here, Qumran. So I don't think I could walk 25 hours all the way to Jerusalem or back. That's quite a hike. Now, who discovered the scrolls? That's what everybody wants to know. So sometime between November 1946 and February 1947, Bedouin shepherds discovered the cave. Now, Muhammad Hamed, known as the Wolf, this guy right here, called him the Wolf, and his cousin Juma Muhammad, and another cousin named Khalil Musa. The story is that the cousins were with their sheep and goats, and one of them wanders off, and they go look for him, and they assume he went into a cave. So they're trying to get that animal out of the cave. They're not sure he's in there, so what they do is they get a rock, and they throw the rock into the cave, and they hear the noise of pottery breaking. Okay, just like y'all have grandkids or kids, all of a sudden you hear a noise in your bedroom, something's broken. And since the animal did not come out, they basically left. And then Muhammad, the wolf, he came back the next day, brought an oil lamp, and tried to climb into one of the holes in the cave and made the discovery. Obviously, he doesn't know what the discovery is at the time. Now, the story does sound fictional. And anytime you read about the Dead Sea Scrolls, you're always going to have different versions. That it was one boy, and then they always use the term boy. That it was a boy, then it was two boys, that it was a sheep, and then it was a goat. There's always going to be different versions. The only people that know are these two gentlemen here, and they do not look like Bedouin boys. Okay? They look more like thieves. That's what one of my professors said. They look more like, come on in, come on in. So, you're always going to read different versions and different accounts of this. Yes, brother, thank you very much. Different versions and different claims. Okay, so we're going to see this cave number 1, Qumran Cave 1. As you can see, there's a gentleman standing there, and that's something. That part here was actually covered, and so was this part. They uncovered it so they can go in easier, which kind of makes the story more difficult to believe, because how did the goat or the sheep get in there if it was sealed? How did it climb up there? That's part of the problem. Another problem is they're saying, well, maybe it was halfway and the sheep or goat was able to squeeze in there, which I doubt, and so did my professors. So we're never going to know the actual story, you know. But eventually, Muhammad, the wolf, climbed in through there somehow and went in. And now we're going to see a picture of Cave 1. And this is looking at it from the inside out. Some people would look at these like their eyes and the nose. We can see a lot of rock formation there. And it is very difficult to find pictures of all the caves. Even my professors didn't have pictures of all the caves on hand, you know. I'm speaking more like on the internet. Very difficult. So that is Cave 1 from the inside. And what is it that they found? So we'll go to the next slide. And what they found was 10 pottery jars. Obviously, this was taken after the fact, as you can see. They just did that for picture purposes. And they found 10 pottery jars, and 8 were empty. And one had the remains of old fruit, and the other one had 2 scrolls wrapped in cloth, and 1 large scroll without cloth. Now, the scrolls that they found were the great Isaiah scroll, and it was complete. Okay, the one that we know, the 66 chapters of Isaiah. Now, they've also found what's called the community roll scroll, or they call it sometimes the manual of discipline. Different scholars gave it a different name at a certain time, and then they're always debating about it. So they changed the names. Another scroll was the Pesher. Pesher means commentary. A commentary on the Habakkuk scroll, which is a commentary on the book of Habakkuk. So we have our first commentary, 2,000 years before Christ. So after some time later, 4 more scrolls were discovered in that cave. And the other 4 scrolls were a second copy of Isaiah, but it was incomplete. The War scroll, and the Thanksgiving scroll, and the Genesis Apocryphon scroll. So there were 7 scrolls total. Yes, brother?
You mentioned 2,000 years before?
Well, I'm using the date not when they were discovered at Qumran or when they were written in Qumran, but rather back before the Babylonian period. Because some scrolls dated back to like 430 BC. So from our present to back then.
Okay, Habakkuk
Yes, I have to. Yes, brother.
is 2,000. Is that what you're saying?
Well, I'm not going by the date from when they assumed that they were writing the scrolls, because a lot of this, when we talk about it tomorrow night, they believe that some of the scrolls were brought actually from Jerusalem to the Qumran community, that they weren't actually written there. But those are other hypotheses. And that's why they come up with these dates, that it could go back as far as even before Babylon. Okay, that's all I can answer on that. it does get confusing because of the dating. And we have to know, are we talking about when they were actually written there? Or are we talking that some Jews brought them from another place and then they were left there? So yes, but that's a very good question, brother. Thank you. So the Bedouins at that time did not know what they had. So they kept them for a couple of weeks. And from what I understand the stories, they just hanged them up somewhere and they stayed there for a couple of weeks. And the name of the scrolls also were given by scholars. It's not that it was called the Thanksgiving scroll. They just, whatever words kept popping out, Thanksgiving, then that's what they called it, the Thanksgiving scroll. So now we're going to go to the next slide. And what the Bedouins did was they sold the first 4 scrolls for about $20 to this gentleman right here, an antique dealer. His name is, well, he's better known as Scando. Everybody knew him as Scando. And he was an antique dealer. He was a Syrian Christian, and he was part of the Orthodox Church. And then what he did was, after he sold it, then we're going to look at the next slide. Then around July 1947 of that same year, Scando sold those 4 scrolls that we were just discussing to this gentleman here, Metropolitan Samuel. Everybody called him Metropolitan Samuel. He was the head of the Syrian Christian church. He sold the complete Isaiah scroll, the complete one, the Habakkuk commentary scroll, the community rule scroll, and the Genesis Apocryphon scroll for $100, for around about $100. So we went from $20 to now $100. And we're going to look at the next slide now. Then, around November of the same year, 1947, the Bedouins sold the other 3 scrolls that they had for $28 to Faidi Salahi, if I pronounce his name right. This is not him. We couldn't get a picture of him. And he was another antique dealer. And what he did was he then sold them to this gentleman here, Eliezer Sukenik. He's the professor of the archaeology Hebrew University. And the 3 scrolls that he sold, or that he bought, were the War Scroll, the Thanksgiving Scroll, and the second copy of Isaiah. And Sukenik paid around $400 for the scrolls. And we're going to look at the next slide. So by May 1948, the British mandate over Palestine had ended, and Israel became an independent state, as we know. Then obviously they were attacked by the Arab neighbors. We know who won, right? Yeah. So this caused further delays for excavating at Qumran. And as much as the archaeologists wanted to go there, and I mean, we're just barely discovering these things, and Israel's becoming a freeborn state, all this had to come to a halt. So it got delayed, and once after some of the tension passed by, to the next one, by March 1949, Cave 1 was professionally excavated by this gentleman here, Lancaster, of the Jordan Archaeology Museum. And pottery and more scroll fragments were being recovered at that time. And then they were going to take it, as they say, to the big boys. And the big boy is this next slide. And his name is Father, he's a priest, Roland DeVoe. He's from the French School of Biblical Archaeology. And DeVoe would be the guy, he would be the head of this endeavor for the next 6 to 7 years. So whatever he said goes. Whatever he called it, that's what it was called. So we're going to go to the next slide. And here what we see is what's called the Wadi Murabat. And in 1951, the Bedouin shepherds found more pottery and documents that were different from the ones that they found in the Qumran caves in this area known as the Wadi. Wadi just means a ravine, and Murabat means a preserved fruit. So what the shepherds found was 170 documents. I don't know if you're familiar with the Bar Kokhba rebellion. This happened around the year 132 to 136 of the Common Era after Christ. What they found was, as they're here in these caves, Qumran is way over here. So the shepherds were in this region here where they found these documents. Now this would be another study, maybe next year or something, of the Wadi Qumran. What they found is in the next slide, and we can see first the cave. Now in the middle picture with the black and white, they actually were hanging a ladder there, and they're climbing on there. And then the modern version here, we have an extension ladder. Now that is very difficult to climb from what I understand, from what I've read, from what professors tell me. Now I don't know how they did it back then, how they got those up there. Some imagine that they probably were on the very top and probably put a rope down, but how do you get the information in there? So we're going to go inside to the next slide, and this is what it looks like looking from the inside out. It's a very beautiful scenery right there in the second picture. And we're going to go to the next slide. So this is what they actually found, these torn documents. Sometimes they were like contracts. And here you can see almost like when you get your mail, right? Sometimes it's all wrapped up. And they also found some coins. And again, this is from the time between 132 to 135 of the Common Era. There was a rebellion leader who fought against the Romans, and his name was Simon ben Kosiba. And he was a Jew, and he was better known by his nickname, Simon Bar Kokhba, which means the son of the star. He was believed by some Jews to be their Messiah, okay, because he was leading the rebellion. The Davidic dynasty was no more, so a lot of Jews believed that he was the one that was going to free them from the Romans. Obviously his rebellion was disastrous, and the rabbis started calling him Bar Kosiba, which in Hebrew means the son of the lie. Okay? So these are the letters and some of the coins that were found in that time period inside the Wadi cave. Now we're going to go to the next slide. And in 1951, Father Roland Duval discovered structural remains of aqueducts, dining rooms, a scriptorium, ritual baptism pools, pottery, and even a cemetery. And as you can see here, how the aqueducts run, and then we'll see the pictures of the baptismal pools in the next slide. And there you can see the stairs that are going down to the baptism. And go to the next slide. Now obviously, if you have read about baptisms of the Jews, it's not like somebody baptizes you. You have to go in there literally and baptize yourself. And some scholars believe that they go down one side of the stairs and then they come up on the other side of the stairs. And obviously this is a more modern picture, and it's dirty, the pool there. And we're going to go to the next slide. And they also discovered lots and lots of pottery. They never run out of pottery. They believe that all this pottery was for communal gatherings. Each one had to have their own bowl, because they didn't believe in sharing the bowls, because the Jews that lived in Qumran were very, they made the Pharisees look like I don't know, like monks, I guess, because they were super strict. When you read the community rule scroll, they were strict. They were super strict, and they didn't share their potteries. They didn't share anything because everything was contaminated to them, except for stone. They didn't believe that stone was contaminated in any way. So we're going to go to the next slide, and the next slide we see these tables where they believe that that's where they would write the actual scrolls themselves. They did find also, the next slide, these ink. They're about, right there it says about 5 to 6 inches. And this is very rare from what I've studied and read, that it's very rare to always find the ink jars whenever there's some type of writing from old documents. And they were able to find some of these. And the next slide, we see what it may have looked like, this community. There are other scholars who debate this. They believe it was actually a Roman garrison, that it never was a Qumran place for Jews, but that the Romans had their, their parties and things there. That's why there's those pools. But that's debatable. They have found more evidence of Jewish quarters there than actual Roman occupation. And then we have another slide, and this is an aerial view of Qumran. So you can see here, we're going to see later the cave and where the community lived. And in fact, when they needed to use the restroom, they could not do it in the community. They actually had to walk out of the community, and because they would defile the community. So we're going to go to the next slide. Here we see another aerial view, and it has the assembly dining hall. It's named. That's why I like that picture. And there's the area of the scriptorium. Now, if you go to YouTube, sometimes you'll see like, wow, amazing modern ways of how they do with all the technology of the computer generated of how these places actually look. So that was cave 1 that they discovered, and now we're going to move to cave 2. So by 1952, the Bedouins found cave 2, excuse me, not far from cave 1, as you can see in the arrows. And what they found was 300 fragments and 33 manuscripts, including all 5 books of Moses, Jeremiah, and the book of Psalms, as well as the book of Jubilees and the book of Enoch were found in there. So we're going to go to cave 3 now. Again in 1952, the same year as well, cave 3 was discovered. Now this cave contained what's called the Copper Scroll. We're going to study about it tomorrow night, which listed several areas of the temple's buried treasure. It was hidden throughout the Judean wilderness and in the Jerusalem area. Now, according to the temple scroll that they found, it's always going to vary. Some say 66, others say 67 hiding places which contain astonishing amounts of gold and copper and silver. And everybody wanted to find all this wealth that was taken by the Babylonians and then the Greeks and the Persians, and it just got lost somewhere, and everybody's trying to find it. Even to this day, there's people trying to look for that. Okay, so that is cave 3 also contained 14 manuscript fragments from about a dozen biblical and non-biblical scrolls. Let's go to the next slide. Here's another shot of cave 3. Who would think of hiding scrolls in there? I've read that when you're driving past the highway down there, you can't even see the hoser from that cave. Go to the next slide, please, and here's another section of it. So, according to one of my professors, the terrain there is just terrible. People do not want to climb it if you have no experience trying to get up there. It's very rough. We're going to go to the next slide. And in 1952, again, of that same period, cave 4 was discovered, and it was the jackpot of all the caves. They found more than 15,000 fragments from over 200 books, and they were found in this cave, nearly all by the shepherds. Okay? The shepherds were very good in these areas, these regions. They knew where to look, and that's what they found. They found 122 biblical scrolls, or fragments, and there are no New Testament books ever discovered at Qumran. There is a scholar out there, forget his name right now, about it. He's basing it on a piece of fragment for like 3 or 4 little letters, and he's comparing it to the book of Mark, and he assumes that it is the book of the Gospel of Mark. And then from there he just makes it bigger and grows it, and using other fragments too. It's like if I take the word and put it in looking for it in another language that kind of sounds similar to it, and Well, this is the word "and" in their language, so it has to be this one. Okay, so this is K4A. One is called K4A and K4B, but it's all one, just like going from this room to the other room. And let's go to the next one. Okay, K4A. Now this is a man-made cave there, man-made section there. It is believed by scholars that this was the hiding place or the library of the Qumran community. This is where they put all their scrolls, because that's another factor. Were they hiding them, or was this just daily life? Let's go to the library. Let's go to K4 to the library. Obviously, they wasn't called K4. But let's show this other slide. And here we see even there's a little caption down there. It says, inside K4 were thousands of scroll fragments, no horizontal cuts, which may have held shells. Okay, so they could have been shells. We put the scrolls there. So the scrolls that were found in this cave, were poorly preserved because they were not stored in jars like in Cave 1. So the practice of paying the shepherds per piece or per fragment led to the creation of multiple fragments. So that made it difficult, because before you were finding the shepherds were bringing me a complete scroll, right? Wow. And now it's like, for every fragment you find, we're going to pay you so much. Okay, so they say, let's tear up the scrolls. And now we got more money. Then you bring them more fragments. And that's how they were making their money. And that just made it more difficult for the scholars, because now you have a puzzle without a picture. Has anybody ever tried to make a puzzle without the picture that it comes in? So this led to more chaos for modern scholars. So let's go to the next slide. And this is Cave 5. Doesn't look like much, but it was eroded away. Archaeologists found this site, not the Bedouin shepherds. So it was like a competition between who finds more caves, the shepherds or the scholars. So archaeologists estimate that there's about 30 to 40 caves in this region. Fragments of 25 scrolls were found in this cave, which is already eroded. And close to Cave 5, we have Cave 6. And Cave 6 was also found in 1952. It contained fragments of 31 scrolls, mostly written on papyrus. Okay, we're going to discuss that on another night, including biblical works, hymnals, and sectarian compositions. In other words, non-biblical. So this small scale cave is the most, from what I've been told, accessible to visitors that go and visit Qumran. So let's go to the next slide. By June 1954, if you remember the gentleman from before, Metropolitan Samuel, he was the one that looked like a priest. He placed an ad in the Wall Street, and as you probably are reading it right now, the son of Sukenik, the other gentleman that was also an archaeologist, while he was visiting the States, he saw the ad, and he purchased them for the state of Israel for $250, which was the War Scroll, the Thanksgiving Scroll, and the Genesis Apocryphal Scroll. So Israel is already a state, and now they have all the scrolls. Now, is that something that divine? Divinely, I don't know, everybody argues that. Or did it just happen in that sense? So let's go to the next slide. And here we have Cave 8 and Cave 7. And it's in that order because this is Cave 8 and that is Cave 7. So between February and April of 1955, Cave 7 and 8 were discovered. Everything found in Cave 7 was in Greek. They had a copy of the book of Exodus in Greek. Now, according to scholars, the cave collapsed shortly after the scrolls were hidden. In Cave 8, archaeologists discovered a mezuzah. This is a mezuzah. This is from our house. Okay. And these, they usually place a mezuzah in Hebrew just means doorpost because they're taking the word of God. They take it literally. keep these words of mine on your doorpost and your head. So this is what they do. They put it there, and then as a sign of respect, you just touch it as you walk out and you walk into your home. They also found fragments of Genesis, and they also found fragments of the book of Psalms, and a dozen square of these, what's called tefillin. These are called tefillin. If you've ever been to a bar mitzvah, or have you ever seen Jews, Orthodox Jews, they put these on their head, and it contains the Shema, which is, Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is one, and they're placed inside. And so they found some of these there, and unfortunately we do not have full pictures of them. They're already broken up, and they found the leather strips. So the workers who probably lived there had the job of making these for the community. And you can see that the little boy there. Oh, let's go back to the previous slide. As he's putting on the tefillin, okay, and they have to bind it, because the Bible says, God says to bind it on your arm and on your forehead. And my son did that for his bar mitzvah here at First Baptist Church. And you have to bind it in a certain way. There's seven strips around, and you have to have the name of God in the Hebrew letter right here. The letter Shin will be here, and that's what they found there. So that was very interesting, because they had no way of proving, like when Jesus is talking to the people and he criticizes the Pharisees for their phylacteries. So these are the phylacteries. Called tefillin and phylacteries. Now we cannot put the one above the head, but at least the phylacteries, because Jesus says, you wear them long, so everybody can see them. Okay, so now let's move on to this other one, which I like this one because it kind of has all the regions of all the caves, which I haven't seen some, but you can see it right there. And here's the Wadi Qumran, and Qumran would actually be the other caves from the Bar Kokhba would be on this side. So you can see some of the caves, how close to the region they were, and maybe why they chose to either hide them there or because that was the place that they were putting them. Okay, so let's go to Cave 10. Now, Cave 10 again was discovered in 1955, and they only found one ostracon. An ostracon is this one right here, and it's in Greek. That is not the one they found. That's just a picture of one, because there is no picture of it, the one that they actually found. That's the sad news about it. I even asked my professors, you got a picture of it, something? Nothing. So I just took this one right off from the internet, and you can tell the date, it's 487 BCE. I forgot a period there. Okay, but it's before the Common Era. And they also found like old pieces of what they believe is part of that, either some type of pottery. They don't know if it belongs to that or it's just broke off from that. We don't know. So we're going to move on now to Cave 11. And Cave 11 was discovered in 1956. It's the last of the Qumran scrolls that were found, caves. 30 scrolls were found, including the book of Leviticus and the Temple Scroll. And the Temple Scroll is the longest of the Dead Sea Scrolls. It measures like 28 feet. And it was in very good condition. And they also found what seems to be a second Torah, the book of the Old Testament. Now, the Temple Scroll was kind of held by Kondo, if you remember the antique dealer Kondo. He kind of kept it. So we don't know since when he had it, because those shepherd boys they're the first ones out there. So we don't know how long he had it. And so word got out, and Yadin, the one who bought the scrolls from the Wall Street, had him arrested. So he had him arrested, and they had him in jail until he eventually decided, you know what, I'll just sell it to you. You let me go. So apparently he sold it out of his own free will. And you can believe that. And he sold it for $110,000. Okay? So now they have the temple scroll. Now we're gonna go move on.
Can I stop you right
Yes,
there
sir.
for a moment? And I'm very sorry to do this.
No, no,
but
no.
I'm confused. This is 1956. You're telling me that there was no Leviticus in the Bible up until 1956?
Oh, no, brother. No, that's what they discovered in the caves. They discovered writings of the book of Leviticus.
Okay.
Yes, copies, yeah.
Now, this is a duplication or a?
Yes.
Okay, all
Yes,
right.
copies. No, well, as far as scholars and archaeologists, there are no originals. They're either copies, or like we said earlier, we're gonna discuss that. Maybe they brought them from Jerusalem, and some of them probably brought them from Babylon. Because a lot of the stuff was written during the Babylonian Persian period, like we saw that other pottery thing. And it was around that time, the Persian period. So, we're in 2017, Cape 12. This is very recent. Dr. Orrin Gutfeld right here, the archaeologist and director of the excavation at the Hebrew University's Institute. Now, they found numerous storage jars and lids from the Second Temple period. The Second Temple period is around after Babylon, when the Jews were taken to Babylon. So further excavations reveal that at one time, there were scrolls in here. But the thieves, the Bedouin thieves, they get in there and they steal them. See, so there was proof that there was more scrolls in there. And towards the end of the excavation, they found a pair of iron pickaxe heads, the ones that you pick the dirt with or the stone with. And that proved that the cave was robbed. So we're going to go to the next slide. Again, this is 2017, our time right now. You can see all the pottery that is broken there. If they were jars with lids, for some reason they broke them, opened them, took them. And we're going to go to the next slide. You can see a parchment of the scroll right here. That's basically like the most important of the pottery that was broken, because that proves that there were parchments there. They probably stole them, ran out, whatever they did, and they left that in there. And we have another close-up shot of it. So that's even closer. They're very fragile to even open. They're afraid that they're going to break. Tomorrow night we'll see more about that. And so this is in our recent time. The only book that was not found at Qumran was the book of Esther. And we're going to discuss that tomorrow. And the book of Nehemiah. They were not discovered. Nehemiah was discovered actually sometime later, but I have it on the other presentation for tomorrow. So we're going to go to the next slide. And this is the shrine of the book. The scrolls today are in Israel in the shrine of the book, which was constructed in 1965 to store for people to go see them. And here we have another slide. This is outside. You can see that black wall right there. Now, according to the interpretation for the color and shapes of these buildings, they're based on the imagery that they read in the War Scroll. So they found the War Scroll, and the War Scroll mentions the sons of light against the sons of darkness. So the white dome symbolizes the sons of light, and the black wall here symbolizes the children of the dark, or the sons of the dark. So we're just going to go to the next slide. And this is inside the shrine of the book, and this is a copy of the book of Isaiah. It's not the one they found. They're not going to place that anywhere. They have that one stored away. But yes, that is a replica of the book of Isaiah. And we're going to go to the next slide. And here we see ex-President Obama and Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, and they're looking at the scroll itself. So let's go to the next slide, and that's the end. And I thank you very much. I didn't know how much time it was going to take me to go through all these slides, because I think we have to like 7:15. So does somebody have a question? If I don't have the answer, I can ask my professors, I can ask somebody.
What was the Greek texts that were found? What's the, what was the purpose or thought behind Greek text rather than the non-Greek text? I think you mentioned the one case that
Yes.
Greek text.
Well, you see, that's very interesting because I actually have the same question. I asked one of my professors, and he still hasn't answered me. Because the question is, once you learn about the community that lived there, they were opposed to anything that was pagan. So it doesn't make sense as why would they have writings in Greek if they were so opposed to Jews that were half-Jews, like the Samaritans. And the community there, we're going to discuss the community that lived there tomorrow, why they left Jerusalem and why they decided to just move here to this community. And a lot of their writings in their scrolls, and I'll bring tomorrow some of the Bible. It's called the Complete Dead Sea Scrolls Bible. You can read it, and it has all the scrolls there that they found. A lot of the things are very funny, very weird what they write, but a lot of them believe that if you were not 100% Jew, then you could not be a part of this community. So that's what doesn't make sense with me either. Why would they have Greek copies of the Bible if they were so opposed to it? It would have been to just destroy it and, we just have the Hebrew. But that's a very good question. I cannot answer that question. I wish I could. I'm still waiting for my answer. But unless somebody looks it up, has an answer, that'd be awesome. I can't think of a reason.
It also seems so inhospitable there. It's amazing
Yes.
that they could live there. It looks completely barren.
And I don't know, I've never been there. I wish I could be there to see that, hands-on. But I know that when I go to Monterrey, Mexico, that's how I feel. It's so hot there. It's like, I can't get away from this heat. And I don't know how they managed to do it. Yes, brother.
So is this like, I know it's the most famous, but is it like the only real archaeological find of the 20th
Yes.
century
Yes,
that has to do with the Bible at all?
yes, brother.
Everything else happened in earlier centuries, is that what you're saying?
No, brother. In fact, there are two, I don't know if you're familiar with some of the church fathers. There's one called Origen. They believe he has some writings where they mention this place. And we're going to discuss that tomorrow, of other people who believe who this community was.
It's just that all the other manuscripts and everything
Yes.
we have were all read in libraries and the churches and stuff like that.
Right.
Is that pretty well?
Yes, after the fact, yes, after Christ, yes, we have a lot of those writings. But we will discuss that more tomorrow, because that's what we're going to focus on the scrolls, and then the day after, comparing the Masoretic text with the Septuagint and the Dead Sea Scrolls, so we can see the difference. Okay. Any other questions? Go ahead, brother.
Just a clarification, when you say Torah, that's the first 5 books of the Bible.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Sometimes when people hear Torah, they think it's the whole Bible, the whole
Yeah.
Old Testament. The whole Old Testament for Jews is actually called the Tanakh. The Tanakh. And like the Pentateuch, it's the first 5 books in Greek. The Pentateuch, the first 5 books of Moses. Now the Septuagint was originally the first 5 books only, but they just kept adding to it, so they know the Old Testament as the whole Septuagint. And there were several Septuagints, so we have to know which one you're talking about, because there have been several throughout the decades. Any other question? Yes, sister?
In spite of how barren and dry it looked,
Mhm.
wasn't it one of the best places to preserve?
Well, you know what? And we're going to discuss that, I think it's in the third night, because it did preserve. The scrolls, they say, are actually better preserved back in the caves than they are now. Because we're going to see that tomorrow too, because when the archaeologists were discovering them, you'll see a lot of them, they were smoking, they were touching them, and they were drinking coffee, and they were not experts at all, even though we want to say they were experts. It's kind of embarrassing now, but yes. Brother, you had a question before? Okay, go ahead.
When they would find the scrolls, did they open them to?
Yes, sister. And as you saw, oh, I don't know, did you see the guy that I always say, the guy that looks like the priest, Samuel, Metropolitan Samuel, he had the scroll rolled up, opened up. That was after he purchased it, but there are pictures of Sukenik and the other archaeologists who have it, like the cave is there, and they unrolled, I'm sorry. They unrolled it. And we'll bring maybe one tomorrow, not a Dead Sea Scroll one, but a Torah scroll that we have. It's like from here to, I don't know, the next room, past the next room, all 5 books of the Bible. So yes, it is very interesting. Okay, Ron.
Yeah, so maybe you said this, but did all of these date back to about the same time, or just the ones in Cave 1 that you talked about went back to about 430?
Yes, brother. No, they all don't date the same time. That's where they have the debate. That some were actually written there at a certain time.
Now I did.
Yeah, and others were brought from somewhere else. And we're going to see that as we see the difference in the Bibles. You'll see the difference, and then that's where you start saying, whoa, okay, this person must have had some original Hebrew from some other place, because it doesn't match this other Hebrew over here in this other place. So yes, that's a very good question. Any other questions?
So they all weren't brittle.
Probably.
When you
Oh,
unrolled
no,
them,
sister.
they
No.
all weren't brittle,
No.
so they,
Yeah.
there's some of them that are
Yes,
still
some
intact.
were actually complete scrolls, other were just more fragments. Now the numbers change, like you'll see some that say there was like 900 scrolls found, or 900 fragments, others will say 800. Well, that's only because as you're, like if you're making a puzzle, you say, well, there's like maybe 900 pieces here, but as you start putting them together, you say, wait a minute, this piece actually belongs to this piece, so there's not really 900, it's actually like, 800 or 859 or something like that, to that point. But yes, some were brittle, very brittle. Especially the copper scroll, that's the harder one. The copper scroll, which we will discuss tomorrow. Any other question? Yes, brother.
You say they were all written in Hebrew and some in Greek. We're talking about really old Hebrew or modern Hebrew?
Oh, that's a very good question. We're going to discuss it tomorrow because I'm going to give, and I'm actually going to give you a hint. Because if Moses and King David were alive today, they could not read the Hebrew that we know of today. They would not. But you'll find out tomorrow why they wouldn't be able to read the Hebrew. So thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any questions, you can email me. I can send you information. Whatever you want. Ask me. I love learning myself. I learn from y'all. I learn questions that you have, and I keep those and keep them in here. And then I ask my professors too, because we